people they'll pick up your calls and they'll help you out. If they know that you're going to do your end, they'll do their end. And it's a really great symbiotic thing. It doesn't feel like cutthroat capitalists in the Quad Cities. It feels like a lot of people who just have a dream, who want to support each other's dreams. And I think that's what Look QC and Bummer City and what the Quad Cities in general is all about.
Where do you find a family of communities connected by the storied Mississippi River, where young explorers and dreamers, investors and entrepreneurs thrive? Where can you connect with real people living and creating in a place that's as genuine as it is quirky? QC, that's where.
Welcome to QC That's Where. I'm Katrina, your host. I'm here today with Dan Bush. Super excited to talk to this and entrepreneur who has brought us Bummer City Inc., which is the umbrella of Analog Arcade Bar, Devon's Complaint Department, Armored Gardens, all these fun hangouts that you all have at least heard of if you haven't yet been. So Dan, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for doing this with me. Super excited. We got to talk, a few weeks, month or so back, and you shared with us kind of your backstory on, how you got to be in the entrepreneurship space in the Quad Cities. So I want to just start with you telling us how Bummer City Inc. came to be and what your plans are right now.
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in Davenport, born and raised. And by the time I was ready to graduate from Assumption High School, I was ready to get out of town and never come back. I was going to go live in big cities, and the Quad Cities wasn't going to be a big part of my life anymore. And that reason was because there wasn't a whole lot going on for young people. The Quad Cities has always been known as a great place to raise a family, but not a super great place for young people. And that's actually changed very recently, within the last few years. But at the time, there wasn't a lot keeping people here that grew up here. And so I went to DePaul University in Chicago. I was going to stay in Chicago, but I happened to meet my wife in high school and we decided to move home. So we got jobs in the admissions department at St. Ambrose University. And the toughest place we could recruit from was the Quad Cities. It was really hard to get students from the Quad Cities to stick around and go to St. Ambrose. We had no problem in Chicago and Central Illinois and Central Iowa, but to get people to actually stay was a big task here. I think a lot of people felt like I did. And so I started getting into food. I started managing Jimmy John's, a few Jimmy John's franchises when I was 25 years old, and I just loved it. I took a liking to it. And the idea was to do Jimmy John's for a while so that I could eventually learn how to run a bar. And then when I was 32, with a few other guys, we opened up Analog Arcade Bar. We were just going to open up one and see how it went, and it went great. And so we basically decided to do more of that. And that's when we opened Armored Gardens, and then the original iteration of the Raccoon Motel, which became Devon's Complaint Department. And now we have an Analog on the other side of the river, and we're looking to expand. So we've definitely planted roots here, and we really try to focus on downtowns. We think reviving downtowns is really important. It's really what gives a city character. People judge a city by the state of its downtown, and not by the outskirts. And so we are really invested in making downtown as great as we possibly can.
One thing I really like that, is kind of in the mission statement of Bummer City Inc. I don't know if mission statement's the right word, but like how you say it's not a bar, it's not a place to eat, it's a hangout. You are invested in finding and creating places for people to exist and just feel comfortable.
Well, I think especially if you're moving into a new area, there's only a few places that I kind of consider, almost like city squares, right? So I think gyms and churches are other versions of that. But I think bars are too. I think restaurants are a little bit more stiff. You typically go sit down, you don't really interact with anyone around you. But bars allows you to kind of mingle and meet people. And so I think that's what we really try to focus on. Even our restaurants feel more like bars than restaurants, because we want to create that atmosphere where you can run into someone and meet them and hang out. And I think that's what we're trying to build more of, is just different types of hangouts for different types of people and different types of moods. If you want something quiet, you can come to Devon's. It's a little bit more of an older crowd. If you want something super young and fun, Analog is definitely the place to go. If you want a nice patio, we have several patios now that we're rolling out that people really enjoy. So it's about giving different looks, and that's what challenges us to do something just different at each place.
And they are so different from each other. I mean, they all offer like a an opportunity to engage with people over more than just, a drink. Like, for instance, Armored Gardens, I used to go there a lot because of the giant chess set in the back
Sure.
of the patio. Because, I had a buddy who would play chess with me all the time. And I was like, hey, let's go play this giant set. And it's more than just, hey, let's get a cocktail together. It's something that you can really make memories around. And it's easy to recommend to other people, whether they're visitors or residents, like, you got to go to Armored and you got to see the 100 tappers, because that's just a site in itself. No one has that many. And while I'm on that subject, when you were working on the idea to, have that many taps at Armored, was there anyone, or any of these ideas, was there anyone along the way that was like, Dan, that's crazy?
No, I think people thought analog was a crazy idea, and we were told by quite a few people that we were going to close within the first year. I think people thought arcades don't exist anymore. Why would you bring that idea back? And it turns out that when you're a kid, the arcades were hot, but now you're an adult and you remember all that stuff. And now you have a little bit of money that you can actually spend on playing games, and so we thought it was a great idea. The 100 taps didn't really phase anybody. I think everyone was really, really excited about it, but I think you nailed it. I think we really try to create bars that are beyond drinking. So analog, we have over 50 games at 2 locations, skee ball, pinball, there's just a whole lot to do. And then at Armored, we obviously have the patio with ping pong tables and things like that. So we really try to give people activities as well, because we think that everything shouldn't just be based around drinking. There should be kind of stuff to do. And if we can create unique spaces where we're the only place with ping pong tables, we think that's a big advantage for us.
These types of establishments like really excite us at Visit Quad Cities, because obviously, like, our purpose is to help aid in creating like a quality of life, quality of place, and being able to brag about what the Quad Cities has to offer, and how there's people like you in the community that are willing to bring it here and make it happen. The Quad Cities, there is so much to do here. At first glance, I think maybe a lot of people don't give it a shot. They don't give it a chance. But then once you start to look, or you talk to someone who lives here, whether you're an outdoorsy person or, you're more into arts and culture, you want to do, something adventurous. I mean, we've got something for everyone. I also see that kind of represented in the smorgasbord of bars that you have offered. And so, like, analog is fun for someone who's, just trying to maybe let loose a little bit and be active, but not, commit to like a full 20-mile bike ride or something. It's like, I want to go out and do something, but I don't want to like get sweaty, just, there's something to do. It's really nice.
Well, I think that's, I think the big thing that's changed here is that we now have options, right?
Yes.
I think there's always been good things in the Quad Cities, but they've been kind of few and far between. They've been scattered between all 5 cities. And now there are several things, and there's almost too many things. There are events that overlap each other that we can't make, right? I look at 2nd Street in downtown Davenport, and there's more happening on 2nd Street than, there was in 2006, really, in the whole Quad Cities. I mean, I have the option to go to a record store, several retail spots, several restaurant choices. There's a cigar lounge, there's a meadery, there's a new movie theater coming in. This is all in one block face. And so, especially for kind of downtown communities, it's becoming that kind of walkable thing where there isn't just bars, there isn't just restaurants or hotels, there's retail, and there's other ways to kind of hang out. And I think that's what's so valuable about what's happening, specifically in downtown Davenport, is that now there are so many options and so many different types of entertainment, outlets for us. And a lot of that is it's really been a team effort between individual business owners, between cities that have been really kind of planning this out, between organizations like Visit Quad Cities and the Chamber to kind of cultivate a new Quad Cities. And I think that the people who have lived here long enough don't take it for granted. The people who see that, oh, it's changed and it's noticed. I mean, a lot of people I know come back to town to visit their families, and they say this place is completely different from when I left. And some people, it's as recently as 4 or 5 years ago, or like, what happened here? And I'm like, yeah, it is palpable that things have changed in the Quad Cities, and we're just here to push it.
And all of this is kind of illustrated in Look QC. Talk about Look QC. What is the mission behind it, and where is it going forward?
Well, I think a big part of the changes in the Quad Cities is that we need to talk about it, and we need to talk about it more. Obviously we have a few publications, the Quad City Times, we have the different news outlets, but we kind of wanted to give our perspective on what was happening, and really just create a periodical that was in physical form. It's not a digital thing. It's something that you can buy at any of our locations. And it's something that you can hand to someone who's new in town, or you can hand to a tourist, or you can hand to someone who just wants to be a tourist in their own city and say, hey, here are a bunch of places you may not have heard about. And then more importantly, here are the stories of entrepreneurs in this area. Here are people who are actually doing it. And I'm a big believer in that you have to tell a story in order to make it something real for someone, right? So if you know the backstory of an entrepreneur about how they got there, all of a sudden that idea could become real for you. And I think it encourages others to be the same. So I think there's this kind of fire boiling in the Quad Cities, and all we're trying to do is pour some gasoline on top of it and say, yeah, there's tons of people talking about it, but we just want to talk about it more. And we want to cater it more towards our audience and to what we think our audience likes. The places that we think our audience likes. We're definitely not saying that these places are the best in town, but these are the options that we feel fit with our 4 concepts. So yeah, we're super excited about it, and the reception's been incredible. I'm getting direct messages from strangers just saying like, this is what I've been waiting for. This is something that I'm really excited about, and I feel your excitement too.
You used the term Instagram when you were kind of describing the format of it. I mean, is it very like photo heavy? What do you think is drawing people to want to open it up and take a look?
Well, I teamed up with a really great partner on this. The graphic designer and creative director for this was Dasha Danger, and she had her own magazine called Editorial QC, which is a high fashion magazine. She's one of the most talented creatives in the Quad Cities, and the Quad Cities is chock full of amazing creatives, from videographers to graphic designers to content creators. There's so many now, and they're so good. But she was the one that I was like, if she passes on this project, then I probably just won't do it. She truly has a gift for laying out something in an amazing way that makes you want to pick it up off a coffee table and read it. And that was really the idea. We wanted to create something that was a little bit different, and create something that was very, very visual, because we feel like there's a visual story to tell in the Quad Cities. People are investing a lot in their spaces, and it shows. I mean, some of my favorites are Miss Fay Cafe, one of the most beautiful build outs. Half Nelson, probably my favorite build out in the Quad Cities. And a new one, Oh So Sweet, just moved down to 2nd Street, a few blocks from their original location. And she put money and time and care and detail into creating a vibe. And that's what sells. That's what shows. And I think that's what separates, that's what really kind of creates more of a cultural aspect to the Quad Cities, is that these places have vibe to them, and they're places where you don't seek it out just because of the product. You seek it out because it makes you feel good when you're in the space. And I think that's what's so great, is that people are really putting attention to that, and that used to be missing here.
Yeah, and on that note, you mentioned a bit ago, people were kind of leaving a decade or so more ago, and saying, or even further back, my parents used to live in the Quad Cities, and they left at one point, and I came back in my 20s, and I always thought, gosh, the Quad Cities is a great place to be in your 20s. There's so much to do here. That was kind of like my lived experience, and to hear that was not the case before, isn't shocking, but it's sad. And I'm just so happy to see that things are really starting to boom here. And places like Oh So Sweet, like you mentioned, and Cookies and Dreams, whatever the product may be, it's the soul of it that appeals to the customer. And at Visit Quad Cities, like when people come into town and they say, do you have any recommendations? It's definitely not like a cookie cutter answer for everybody. You have to kind of ask, what are you interested in? What do you like to do? So like, Dan, if you had to give your own set of recommendations from like morning to night, where would you send someone, like, for breakfast and activity and like a nightcap?
Oh, I mean, and that's a great question. I mean, if I'm going to go for breakfast, I'm probably going to start my day either in the district at QC Coffee and Pancake House. I'm going to get the cinnamon roll pancakes, which are the most amazing thing in the world. Or I'm going to go up towards kind of northeast Davenport to Lynx and get the root vegetable hash, which is like my one of my absolute go-tos. For lunch, I'm going to Village Corner Deli in the East Village, or I'm going to be going to Blue Spruce, which is new in downtown Davenport, and it's incredible. They have this thing called the hummus bowl, where basically you get vegetables, hummus, bread, a little kind of side salad with it, and you eat it and you can focus in the afternoon. You're not bogged down by a burger or a pizza or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
You can feel great and you can focus in the afternoon, which is amazing. And I'm lucky enough where it's a block from where I work, so I get to walk down there, and they have an amazing crew, and the product is just, you know, first class. So that's awesome. Dinner picks, you can usually find me if I'm going out to dinner and it's not my own places. It's probably at Kitchen Brigade, which is in Stomp Box Brewing. The food there is absolutely incredible, and it's in a very casual environment. So you can show up in a t-shirt and shorts and have food that you're eating, that you could be eating at a fine dining restaurant. Otherwise, I really like Twin Span Brewing. The food up there is in at the TBK Sports Complex, and top notch. Probably the best kind of bar and grill type food, a step up, an elevated step up from that. And it's something that I'll drive the 20 minutes from my house to get up there because it's so incredible. I really don't drink anymore, so I don't really go to bars, and I think about bars all day, so I don't want to be in a bar very much. But for coffee, 392, the Hangout in downtown Davenport is another one of my staples. So again, like, I'm floating all over the place, and there's so many different, now it's all in the different cities, you know. Another one of my favorites, probably my all-time favorite, is Lemongrass. Lemongrass is in downtown Moline, and everything they put out is great. And every time you get it, it is exactly how you remember it. And I think consistency wins, especially in restaurants. And I think they provide it. So it's great. You know, if I want to go shopping, I go to Theo & Co. or Red's Threads. I buy 90% of my clothes through those two places. And, you know, 5-10 years ago, it was Old Navy and Target and online.
Yeah.
You know? So now we have these options where you can actually go and support something local, and you get to feel the clothes and try them on and make sure the fit works, instead of rolling the dice online. So I think these are just great things that are happening.
And
What
I just
about
have
you?
to say
What are
this,
your picks?
my picks. Oh, well, okay. So we're downtown Moline. So like for lunch, a lot of times breakfast or lunch really, but we've got, sorry, I'm losing the name of it. I lost the name of it, but I'll look it up, but it's over on, it's on 5th, right next to Chase Bank, but pardon me, I'll get that back. But yeah, Lemongrass is awesome for lunch. Over in Rock Island, I live by Riverfront Grill, so that's always a good like pizza spot. You know, I like to do the Harris and Happy Joe's. Those are always like picks of mine when I was coming into town as a kid from Michigan. We always had to go to, you know, to those pizza spots. Let's see, like for activities, love to take the kids out for a stroll along the river. The new I-74 bridge pedestrian walkway is such an amazing view. You can stand on that glass oculus and just look out. You can look down if you're brave enough. It is very thick glass, so no worries there. Yeah, but there's so much to do. And I have to say this about the Quad Cities, there is literally no commute, you know, like no commute time. You can get anywhere you need to go within like a 20-minute span. Whether you're going to work, whether you're trying to, you know, go to a restaurant, you can park right out front. And I think that's something that like the bigger cities lose out on that we have, because we have all the amenities that you want and need, but you don't have to go through the hassle to get them.
Yeah, and I think that you nailed it. I think we're tapping into what I think is a perfect storm. As the Quad Cities is better than it's ever been, I think cities have never been worse. I think COVID broke the model of what cities are. You know, a big part of it is that you have these corporations that come in and buy blocks at a time, and they jack up the rent. The number one way to build equity and build wealth is through your own home, and it's no longer viable without generational wealth in major cities. The Quad Cities still has affordable real estate. So we're talking about a scenario where there's tons of things to do, and you can afford to own property here. You can afford to live a life here. And if you want to, you can take a little weekend trip. You know, if you leave, you know, by breakfast, you can be in, you know, 10 different cities by lunch. You can make your way up to the Twin Cities. You can make it to Milwaukee, Chicago, St. Louis, Kansas City, Des Moines, Omaha by lunchtime. And I think that's the valuable thing, is that if you're working remote, or if you're just looking to relocate. I mean, I have people in my life who have relocated from LA, from Austin, Texas, from Denver, from Chicago, who have made their way back here and saying, "Oh, I never thought I would move back, but this is great. I can have a house with a yard, and I don't have a landlord that just jacks up the rent every year. I can get anything I need in my life within 10, 15 minutes. My commute to work, I can get to downtown Moline or downtown Davenport in 6.5 minutes. So basically a song and a half. By a song and a half, I'm at work. And I love that aspect of my life. There is no commute. It's basically zero. And so my life isn't wasted in a car or on a train somewhere, so it's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot to be said for that, for just the time that you get to save. It came back to me. It's Melly's Pancake House. So they're, I think, 2 years into their business now. Yes. Thank you.
Amazing. So good.
And it's great. Breakfast, lunch, whatever. If you want to do a combo, like they're right there. And I'm fortunate enough to live in Rock Island, work in Moline. So, all the Illinois side stuff is just right at my fingertips. Like you said, Iowa side stuff is just a couple of minutes. It's just fantastic. And so we are seeing growth in all of the cities. As far as your business endeavors, are you looking at any of the Quad Cities as, a place to start moving into outside of, Davenport, Moline?
We're always looking in downtown Davenport, but the place that we're really focusing on is Moline Center, downtown Moline. We think the bones are there. And I think when you brought up the bridge has changed everything. What an amenity to have this wide lane bridge that's looks like it's from the future, and you can get across it super quick. There are no traffic jams on the bridge anymore. So getting a big problem in the Quad Cities historically is that people stick to one side. Iowans are Iowans, Illinoisans are Illinoisans, and it really kind of cross over between the two. And I think the I-74 bridge changed everything. But downtown Moline, first of all, you have a beautiful historic neighborhood. And the city has done a fantastic job with the streetscape. It's walkable. It's nice. It feels safe. And more importantly, I think the real estate is in a position now where it makes it affordable for young entrepreneurs to kind of jump in and get their feet wet a little bit. Mm-hmm. Downtown Davenport has become pretty pricey because of the demand. But downtown Moline, there's still a lot of empty storefronts that people can fill. And so we're kind of poking around quite a bit in downtown Moline to try to find our next project there.
You've got 2 locations for analog.
Yep.
Would you make a second location of one of your existing businesses, or would you go something completely new?
We made a second analog basically because we felt like there could be one on each side of the river, and we felt like it could be supported, and it is. It's great. But we're not really in the business of repeating the same thing over and over again. I've had several inquiries over the last few years for people who wanted to franchise Armored Garden specifically, saying, I want to bring this to my town. I don't want to do the same thing over and over again. I started with 2 Jimmy John's and I worked my way up to 5. And every time we opened a new store, I'd wake up that morning and just kind of deep sigh and be like, well, it's a routine, right? I know what I'm doing, and that's it. And I think what we're really trying to do is create completely different things and build up neighborhoods. So we try to get our things as close to as our other concepts as possible, and try to build a fan base that way, where you can hop to 2 or 3 of our different places all in the same night. And we like the challenge. And so there's a list. We're working down a list of things that we want to do, and we're just trying to find the right piece of real estate to kind of connect with that idea and build it out. So and we can do that here. There's no way that I could do this in any major city. I don't have the funding. And I get to work with Blackhawk Bank and Trust, who's been my partner for 8 years. And they've just been so accommodating. And it just shows that the community backs you, and it's a really, really great thing. There's a lot of safety. I mean, when something like COVID happens and, Blackhawk freezes my loans and makes sure that we're able to make it through, is invaluable. And it just shows what kind of amazing people in the community that there is.
That's one thing I hear consistently is, there's the cliche, like Iowa nice, Quad Cities nice, but I do hear, the stories of people really feeling community support here in the Quad Cities. And I don't know if it's like trauma brings you closer, because we do deal with like flooding, seasonally more often than not, more years than not. And we know how to deal with it. We build, HESCO barriers, but sometimes things happen. And like, if we look back to, 2019, some of our downtowns businesses were really affected, but people really stepped up to help and support. and bring it all back. And so that's just one example, but I do hear that consistently, that the Quad Cities does have that like brother to brother support. I mean, have you felt that personally too?
Unbelievably, I think the flood is a great example. But even just last week, I mean, we put out this magazine a couple weeks ago, and then I get a direct message from Nick Cox, who's the GM of the Blackhawk and the Current, and he basically said, "Hey, let's grab lunch and talk about this." And we met up, and he's like, "I'd love to get one in every room, and we love to sell it in the sundries at the hotels." And he reached out to me. I was planning on reaching out to him, but Restoration St. Louis and Nick and they really are invested in the community, and they want to connect, and we want to collaborate. We just did a collaboration with Buttercup Candles at Devon, where we made an old-fashioned smelling candle, and working with them has been amazing, right? And so we're just trying to do more of that. All of our t-shirts we do through, and printing we do through NAR City. It's like you build these relationships over time, and people they'll pick up your calls and they'll help you out. If they know that you're going to do your end, they'll do their end, and it's a really great symbiotic thing. But again, there doesn't feel like cutthroat capitalists in the Quad Cities. It feels like a lot of people who just have a dream, who want to support each other's dreams. And I think that's what Look QC and Bummer City and what the Quad Cities in general is all about.
When you were making Look QC, was there anything that you discovered that you were surprised by, or you didn't know before in your writing and developing?
I mean, really, it's the tough part of Look QC is how do you try to encapsulate everything that's happening. We didn't want to make a bar and restaurant guide. We wanted something where it's like, okay, here's a good water park. You want to go to Whitewater Junction in Rock Island, or you want to go to Andalusia and go tubing with your kids. You want to go on excursions. If you want to go resale shopping, there's some good places in Muscatine. How do we put that all into 61 pages, right? And so that was the challenge, is that there's stuff that we had to leave out just because there was overload. And we really tried to narrow it down and say, okay, here's just a few good choices. How do we do that? And so that's a new problem. And I think that's what I really want to cover, is that before it was the Whiteys and Happy Joes and Hungry Hobos of the Quad Cities, and now there are so many unique, weird, one-off places that I'm handing it to people who've lived there their whole lives. They're like, I haven't heard of some of these places. And even the place that you mentioned, the Riverfront Grill. Yeah. I've never heard of it. So now you have a new place for me to check out. So that's awesome.
Totally. Riverfront Grill, must give them some mega props too while we're there, because they have an absolutely gorgeous patio out on the Rock River. So, it's 2-in-1. It's good food and it's a nice view. So
where is it then?
Blackhawk Road.
Okay.
Yep. If you're going past like Blackhawk Bank and Trust, it'll be on the riverside, between like 30th and 38th Streets, roughly.
Okay. Yeah, I built the Jimmy John's on Blackhawk. So.
Oh, okay. Yes, I'm very familiar with that Jimmy John's.
Yep.
So, one thing I wanted to make sure I touched on, I was looking at kind of your backstory on Bummer City Inc.'s website, and it noted that you kind of had these grandiose plans to have a bar or two in like just a couple of years, right? And then it turned out to be that you spent a little more time kind of like developing it, and before you actually like dove in head first. Can you kind of speak to like what experiences you built up in that time, instead of like making a quick turn, like, let's get this done? You actually wanted to like spend time with it.
Yeah, well, I think, one thing is that we're self-funded. So everything we do is through a bank loan. My partners and I, we put up our own money and we borrow the money. So it's not like we have someone with a blank check who just says, go do what you do. So we have to be very careful. I mean, one of my goals is to never be in a bad financial position. And so we have to be very, very careful about what we do. And with the world in flux, especially since COVID and a pending recession. Are we in a recession right now? I don't know. Kind of feels like we do, but it's the type of thing where we just want to be cautious. And so, one of the things is we bought, ironically, a Jimmy John's next to Analog Moline. And we had a concept called Bummer Burger. And it's basically, my first job was at McDonald's when I was 16. I absolutely loved it. And I wanted to bring back the fun of fast food. Fast food's not fun anymore, and I really wanted to make a fast food joint. But then we got construction bids back, and they were too high. So instead of just kind of ramrodding it through and say, "Hey, this is the plan, we're going to do it," we're in a position where we can kind of sit back and let that building sit and just say, "Okay, when the timing is right, we'll do it," or we'll fizzle on it and we'll have a new idea that we're excited about that we're going to put in that space. So I think patience is a big part of what we try to practice the most, just because a lot of people in our position, we see expand really fast and there isn't a plan to scale, and it ends up biting them pretty hard. And so we just don't want to be those people.
I think that kind of taking time in an endeavor and, being able, like from the community aspect, being able to see something grow over time builds trust, not only does it build like curiosity, what will they come up with next? What is going in here? But it's like, I trust this establishment. I trust this entrepreneur. I trust this community, that they're not just like bing, bang, boom, develop as fast as you can and hope it all works out, Yeah. And I think that's kind of what's happened with the Quad Cities. It's kind of been like a slow churn. And now people who were gone for 3, 4, 5, 10 years are coming back and going, wow, that's awesome. Things are really different.
And the cool thing is it's not just in 1 or 2 of the cities. There's amazing places in all 5. I mean, you head out to East Moline in the Rust Belt, like how many cities can say they have a place like the Rust Belt where there's this huge music venue, there's a brewery, there's a restaurant, there's a coffee shop. It sounds like there's another restaurant going out there. They're all 5 cities are different. All 5 cities are changing. I mean, and that's what's fun to watch, is the transformation. The transformation is very, very real. And no matter where you're at, you're going to find something around you. One thing in the guide is I didn't list any Mexican restaurants. I said, basically all of them are good. If you spit in any direction, you'll be able to find great Mexican food in the Quad Cities. I mean, and that's one of the greatest things that we have to offer. And I don't think people realize that we have things like Mercado 1/5. That's, Fridays in the summertime in downtown Moline that are basically, it's a free festival. And it's some of the most amazing food that you can get literally anywhere. And a variety of food. If you want shrimp ceviche, if you want, cow tongue, like you can get it there. And so I think, like, for the foodies, there are more and more options, and there are more and more places to kind of check those out. And I think that makes it exciting.
Definitely. What are you looking forward to for Bummer City Inc. coming up?
So we just took over the pizza operation in Moline. And so that's really, really exciting. We're ready to roll out our full menu, I think today. And then we're adding a patio. So we think that the Illinois side, we're basically taking the idea of the Armored Gardens patio and making it in Devon size. And we're adding that in just a couple of weeks. So we'll be opening up a patio over there. Awesome. And then we also launched a merch line. And so we have that selling right now at Crafted QC. We're going to add a few other places, and then we're going to do pop-up events. But basically, we want people to rep the Quad Cities. And when you go to other cities, you see people repping their city. And the big kind of trigger was I was in my daughter's orthodontist appointment. And I was waiting for them in the lobby, and every kid that came in was wearing a Yosemite or a Yellowstone or some kind of vacation shirt, Hilton Head or whatever. And I thought, oh, let's just make Quad Cities merch that we would want to wear. And try to encourage other people to make their own lines. And Narcity is a great resource for that. If you have a t-shirt idea or a hat idea or whatever, hit them up and they'll be able to hook you up. So getting people to take pride in the area, I think is something that we're really after. And I think it starts with an attitude. It starts with the people who work the front desk at hotels to say, no, the Quad Cities is great. There's tons to do. Right. It's the citizens who aren't barking and complaining online and saying, actually, there isn't a lot missing anymore. The way I put it is that we have everything you need and most of what you want here. And the big city amenities are here now. And it takes perspective. It takes pulling someone in from the outside and showing them around and saying, look at all we have. And they're like, yeah, it's great. This is awesome. I love it. You show them the price tag and then they consider moving here. So it's great.
Yeah. One thing you kind of hit on was just, the hospitality aspect of your hotel workers, and really like your frontline staff are so important to be willing and able and helpful to, kind of guide people, whether they live here or not. I think a lot of credit should be given to frontline wait staff, bartenders, baristas, what have you. And so I'll mention this at Visit Quad Cities. We've got a program, the certified tourism ambassador program, where we're kind of just scooping up people from the community who feel the same way, as passionate about building up the community and acting as that helpful, friendly guide voice for people, all over our region, really, or anyone who's coming from outside of it. We train them, give them the resources, because not everybody knows the answer to every single question. It's impossible, but we have the resources available to at least say, I don't know the answer for you, sir, ma'am, but I can help you find it, so seeing that CTA program grow to, we're nearly at 100 people now. It's just like a small army that's getting bigger and bigger. It's so encouraging to see that people do want to help rep the Quad Cities. And, the fact that that's growing is so encouraging to us.
Well, and I think that's a great idea. I mean, I think it's a great program, and I think it's vital that we have to be the beacons. You can advertise, you can put up billboards in other cities, you can have ad campaigns, commercials, whatever. Nothing is more effective than word of mouth. Mm-hmm. Nothing is more effective than a personal recommendation. I think the Blackhawk does a fantastic job. They send a lot of business our way, and their staff spends a lot of time in our places, right? Because they've gotten to know us, we've gotten to know them, and they know that we're after the same thing, and that's to make the Quad Cities as great as possible. And so I think that's what Look QC and what our entire mission is trying to encourage, just like yours at Visit Quad Cities, is how do we push this place, and how do we show the world, that a place that you wouldn't think would be a place to visit or live is actually a great place to visit and a great place to live. If you're living in Chicago and you want to get away for a weekend, stay in an Airbnb in LeClaire, right? Mm-hmm. Stay in one of our fantastic hotels. We have options, and so that's what we're both trying to push. So I think it's a great thing. Yeah.
Well, on that note, Dan, I really want you to take the QC That's Where campaign and fill in the blank. QC That's Where.
QC, that's where there is a tons to do without the big city price tag.
Amen. I love it. Thank you so much, Dan. Look, QC is out and available now. Like you said, it's at Blackhawk Hotel. The current, you're holding it right there. If you're watching on the YouTube version, we are seeing the cover live in action. So it's in all of your hangouts, analog, Devon's, armored. Anywhere else? Can I link to it? Is there a link where people can find it? I know it's not digital, but
bummercityinc.com. You can find our places and then follow us on Facebook and Instagram is always a help.
Love it. Okay. I will link all that for you all. Dan, thank you so much. This was really awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to QC That's Where, a podcast powered by Visit Quad Cities. Text Visit QC to 38314 for insider events, activities, and updates sent straight to your phone. That's VISITQC, one word, to 38314. Message and data rates may apply.